I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Alpine IQ. Really, it started as a result of my father passing, and I was a couple startups deep. Really wanted to avoid the corporate runaround again and dealing with kind of the same problems. Just had so many startup stories that resonate with a lot of people, things that they've gone through. And really, at the end of the day, just wanted to pay me and my brother's bills. Wanted to get out of that corporate life and move into something more fun and exciting and something we could just be ourselves in. Really, when he passed, he also had a business with his brother back in the 90s, which was like one of the first print database companies ever. So they took like the New York Times and all the big newspapers and they digitized all the newspapers. So you could like search, like Google search newspapers. This was before there was like there wasn't enough websites to really even search websites, right? So
he was responsible for giving data to the internet itself.
Yeah. So like if the internet didn't go to where it went, you would have an archive of all the papers from back to the day. So they would take all the old ones and do that. It was a really successful company. And so I wanted to emulate that after he passed. And I'm really close to my brother, West. And so he went from A&M to selling plastic resin on train cars in the millions of train cars at once type of thing of plastic resin. And one day he got sick of that and just moved to Seattle to work for a company called Tilray. And Tilray ended up being the first publicly listed NASDAQ company in cannabis. And they could do that because they were in Canada, where it had just turned federally legal. So you had flower, and it's crazy up there. The government can ship cannabis like via the postal service, but like retailers can't. And they also have kind of a monopoly on alcohol. Like they own all the liquor stores and stuff in Canada. And it's really interesting how they monopolize the better retail storefronts and they have Costco size operations.
And that's Tilray?
This is Tilray. Or no, sorry. Tilray is where he worked at the time when it became federally legal. Just saying Canada has some crazy rules around how they push product out and stuff. So I wanted to work with him and we caught up playing video games because I started my career actually being a professional Halo player. To hang out with my brothers growing up. We had divorced parents and they lived with my dad and I lived with my mom. I would play video games with them online and that's really how our relationships blossomed. So I was playing with Wes while he lived in Seattle, a game called PUBG, and having a good time. And he just kept explaining things in the cannabis industry that were bizarre to me. Like everything seemed like Windows 95 or like some software product that didn't work in blue chip and they had to bring it into cannabis because they literally had nowhere that they could operate. So there wasn't a lot of competition, still pretty new.
Yeah, no one was innovating, right?
Yeah, and this was 2019. So you're a couple of years deep into legal cannabis, but not that many states yet. So it was very new to me.
How old were you at that 2019?
I was 29. Oh, yeah, 29. My brother, I think he was like 24, 25. And so I just found a bunch of gaps in data. Honestly, it was really boring at first. Is how do we take a bunch of data in the cannabis industry and consolidate it, cleanse it? There's no like universal product codes on products or anything like that. So no one could tell who was trending across states or like really at Tilray, if you were to go buy a bunch of retail stores for $300 million, there was no one that could tell them if it was a mistake or how much they really were selling, or there was just tons of data problem. So
that's interesting. So there weren't even SKUs. So there was just no data.
There's SKUs, but they're like, they're really weird. It's like a brand has a SKU. Then there's like these metric systems that are state regulated systems that have to transfer stuff. It's bizarre. So really we started there with just solving that problem. When I built that with my co-founder, Shaz, from 2019 in July till I want to say February of 20 is when we really started the company. We said, hey, here's V1 beta product. And I looked at my brother who was in sales at Tilray and I just said, hey, I'm going to hire you out of Tilray. I put all my savings into a bank account and said, you have 90 days or we're all broke, pretty much.
And that was, you said February of 20. So right before COVID was massive.
Yeah. So we got one trip to Canada to meet some of his contacts from Tilray. couple retail chains, and I did one trip to Vancouver, turned around, and the border was shut. So,
oh wow,
no,
and you
no
just put all your
rent.
life savings into it.
Well, you got to think we're already like a year deep of coding every day. We just weren't making money. We weren't selling it. We had a lot invested in this. I had, I think he was 2 years old, my son at that time. My wife was going to school and pregnant with our second kid. So really, it was just a lot of stuff going on. My dad had just passed, and then COVID starts. And that was interesting for cannabis because at first, all retail shuts down, and my product was built for retail cannabis, right? So it was really scary at first. But then within a couple of weeks, they were deemed emergency status. So all retail in Canada and the US instantly became digital. So COVID actually helped software and cannabis, I would say, and software and cannabis in general, because what happened was you used to only go in and pay with cash at stores. That's it. And you'd have 5 to 6 minutes with a customer before you lost them forever. There was no such thing as like loyalty programs. There was no like CRMs really being used. There's no online shopping, no e-commerce, not even what we call
Super
Ropus.
outdated. Yeah, it's like shopping in the 90s. Even
Exactly.
then,
Exactly. So really, we hit the timing perfect. We offered a digital solution to basically take all of your stuff and push it into the cloud and then port it to like marketing tools, CRMs, online shopping. It was me and my brother. My first hire was in marketing. And then we had 3 hires in sales by August of 2020. So not a big team. By January, we had 17 total team in the US, no contractors. And I was still pouring in money to cover payroll. So I was doing consulting on the side. So was Shaz, our CTO. And so we were covering all the bills and I wasn't paying anybody. Well, me and the founders didn't get paid. I think our first check was like December of 21 to ourselves. So we really bootstrapped this thing. And that was to maintain ownership.
and
right?
all 3 of you were basically working 2 jobs to keep it afloat.
Yeah, basically. We made $200K the first year with those 5 people. We lost a little bit of money, but we're talking 5 to 20 grand out of what we were working with. Yeah. So not a huge deal. I raised $312,000 from friends and family, very close people, some of them ex-Tilray folks. And we just really bootstrapped it. That's pretty much my secret sauce. I do everything, right? We built the website ourselves. We did all the copy, all the sales material, the decks, all the investor material, really clean cap table, just built it up, every part of it by ourselves.
From business development to engineering, it was the 3 of you.
Yeah, and this was only 3 years ago. So we did $200K that year. The next year we did right at 3 million. It was like 2.98 million. And then last year we did 13. And then this year we're already, I think, 30% ahead of schedule, and we'll do close to 30. And then that's at 30% EBITDA margins, fully profitable. I burned $750,000 to build the business to where it is today, which is basically nothing compared to my competitors who have spent 600 million, 100 million, 30 million. So it's super interesting, right? Because now the market was really climbing through COVID, especially in software and growth stocks, but profit is everything. And I've always just maintained, don't go and get a bunch of money, right? Raising money is the worst day of your life. Between my brother, myself, and my co-founder, we're 80% of the business. So we control the board, we control the company. We're a cash business. So like everything is super profitable. We watch our expenses. We're not buying Lamborghinis, although I do want one. Which is how I met you. So, it's been crazy. And hopefully within the next 12 months, we'll do 44 to 60. And that would just be insane. From a startup perspective, that doesn't happen. Even like boasting about this myself or anything like that. If you saw that in the wild, it's insane stats inside or outside cannabis. Pretty much nobody is doing that.
That's probably what set you apart from the competitors alone. I mean, 60 million, 100 million for them to not even be close to your type of progress and revolutionizing an industry is because you did the engineering, business development. Like you guys had everything to actually make it work.
And it helps we both cared about cannabis, right? A lot of
Yeah.
these guys coming into cannabis are like ex Tivana Starbucks people, or they're ex some,
Damn, dude, straight up
especially,
Silicon Valley type shit. Wow.
yeah, especially like healthcare, right? You have big pharma guys that are coming in
Yeah.
trying to get the lay of the land. But the reality is, if you don't know the culture of cannabis and like really help people get around the stigmas and stuff like that, you don't really care about it. You don't know how it works. Like the people that are involved for the last 30 years in it, you'll never go anywhere. People can see right through that. So it's really interesting. But lots of innovation happening here because COVID took everything online. Then you started to have e-com players in the space like Dutchy and iHeartJane to compete with Weedmaps and Leafly. And things have just radically shifted in the last 3 years, right? We went from let's raise a bunch of money and do this momentum investing strategy to all those people are in trouble. They're all going to have to take down rounds. There's no chance they come back to just like what their preference stack is for their VCs. They have guys like Tiger and Sequoia and Founders Fund and all these people that are not going to not want their money back. So all your common stock falls behind their money coming out first. And a lot of people are starting to catch on to that. And talent is leaving these companies and revenue's stagnant, and pretty much almost everybody in the space and the tech side is really just chasing payments revenue at this point.
Right.
So credit card processing, debit card processing behind the scenes, and they earn 1.5% of what's selling. But in my opinion, long term, that's not going to work. The second federal legalization happens, when you go into a dispensary to buy some cannabis, you don't really care who processes your credit card.
100%. Yeah.
So you're going to have a lot of competitors in that space. Yeah. I know I'm jumping around a lot, but
No, dude, that's amazing. There's so much of it I didn't know. You had a lot prepared. That's crazy. This story is like super day to day for you, I guess. The way you just explained that was amazing.
Yeah, no, it's been wild. So now we're at 60 people full time. We're going to 120 this year, and we're building more and more products to help facilitate these operators and give a voice to cannabis. And now we're such a large part of cannabis. Roughly 40% of the entire market globally runs through our software at this point. And those are going to be everybody that's well funded all the way down to a mom and pop that really needs help in a place like Oklahoma or Ontario. And we're going to continue to invest in the industry, but really things like safe banking, the Safe Banking Act, federal legalization would be nice, but really safe banking would be huge for the industry to make payments viable and like give access to capital to some of these operators. So we're also spinning up a team now to really take that voice we gave to cannabis to the rest of the world. And really our main competition at this point is Klaviyo and Airship and the Twilio types of the world. So now we're going after the unicorns of the space and helping people, coffee shops, beverage alcohol, other regulated industries, specialty retail, you name it. We have clients there now, even just restaurants.
Wow. It's diversified from cannabis to...
Yeah, and you really need that, right? Because in cannabis or just in the market right now, you could look at anybody in cannabis or any non-profitable software, and it's down 50 to 80%. If you SPAC'd and used that vehicle to go public in the last couple of years, Leafly, Weedmaps, Springbig, there's a couple other examples. They're all almost zero. They've gone from $250 million valuations, $500 million valuations, all the way down to my biggest competitor in cannabis is now market capped at $8 million. But these are just like,
and you're doing
that's a reaction from the investor. Yeah, but that's a reaction from the investor community that just these operators in this space are just not professional and like financially, fiscally responsible for making a profitable business. They just wanted to throw money into cannabis because they thought that it was cool and they wanted to be like a drug lord or something.
Yeah.
And coming from some random corporate company.
Silicon Valley El Chapo version.
Yeah. And so it's just like that. You can see right through these operations. They're just not run that proper. So it's been interesting. I'd like to get rid of that stigma because obviously my revenue being tied to cannabis means my comps are tied to cannabis as a company from a valuation perspective. So now that we're outside of just cannabis, you take your total addressable market, TAM, which before for us, you have 10,000 licensed retail operators in basically the world to call on. 3,000 owners probably own all 10,000 of those licenses, right? Because some people have more than one store. Some people have
Right.
150 stores.
Yep.
So we can call every operator in a couple minutes. Like with auto dialers and 10 people, you can be done in a day. So it's all about building real relationships. When you go outside and you say, okay, the max people I can sell are these 10,000 retailers. In order to expand my valuation and give our company a great shot at helping the rest of the world, we have to say, okay, we're going to go work in these other industries. Our TAM exponentially increases. And then people don't really think about this. Yeah, we're making a lot of money, but let's say that we didn't increase our TAM. Most likely these types of SaaS software companies get bought by people. It's not usually a VC thing. You can take VC all the way to public, which is a great exit, but that's such a rare opportunity. Most of it's PE sales. So a private equity shop is going to want to come in, partner with you. At this stage, making $30, $50 million, they have to write a fat check to come in and be a partner with you in your business. But that's what they want to do. They don't want to take you out, take all the leadership out and keep going, not the smart ones. They want you to sell 40% and then you want to go triple the business with them. They're expecting 3.5 times their revenue in growth and not 100x like a VC usually bets on. So more methodical. And the important fact there is, okay, if I'm 45% of cannabis right now, they can't make a 3x return on my business if I sell it to them today because there's not that market doesn't exist yet. You have to wait for Germany to open up licensing. You got to wait for more stores to open up and then they can do that. So by saying, hey, we're going after coffee shops, everything, bike shops, outdoor, all this other stuff, and you show some revenue growth there that, hey, this is a scalable business outside of cannabis. It does work there. Then the story is much better for them, right? They can easily 3x their business. They can easily 10x their business. So that's where the stage we're at right now is growing that revenue line item outside of cannabis, still investing and waiting for license count growth. And then today, if you can get that with all those valuation levers, this business is worth a lot, right? In cannabis, I would say it's worth 5x revenue. So 168 million. And then with the extra TAM, you could probably get up to a 12x right now in today's market, like reasonably. We're not doing those 100x, 40x stuff you saw during low interest rate COVID times, right? That doesn't exist. That's where everybody's running into a lot of problems.
And you're in year 4, technically really year 3 of business?
Yeah, technically year 4 now. Okay. Yeah. And from the date we started selling. Yeah.
And this year's goal really is to more diversify. You've got the main company's goals, but you also still want to diversify. That's this year's goal, right? Yeah,
the going fully agnostic is definitely this year's goal. Really going after the Klaviyo's of the world.
That shows me how much like macro picture you have, but in 3 years or 4, like the micro execution from a day to day, that's what's really impressive to me. Like you have the macro picture and the micro day to day action. Was that always a part of you? Like you always saw the big picture and just kept moving as fast as you can, or where did you learn those lessons from?
Yeah, so one of my previous companies really struggled with that startup. Built it up from scratch, very similar, raised money, got behind the ball, had dealt with shady people for the first time in my life, right? Dealt with things like that really hinder your performance. And I've always been doing micro tasks. Like I still answer our live chat on our company as much as I can. I still write documentation. You got to pick up the bag as a leader and just do the work, right? You can't just sit here.
You can be the face of the company and customer service, everything.
Yeah, you can't just write down a vision and expect everybody else to just pull the weight, 100%. Right?
Yeah, that's what they get at those 100 million, 600 million evaluation companies that people are working for.
Yeah, but then you really lose the pulse on everything, right? Like you gotta know what all your competitors are doing, but you also gotta know what's important to your staff, what like following the trends of their like live chat requests that are coming in constantly that could be solved by like a product UX change or just removing a feature that's confusing or moving a toggle around. Like these are the things I really obsess about. The macro picture is more stuff I learned as I go, right? Like you're not going to learn about how to evaluate like acquiring a business sitting in school, right? You just got to go do it. You got to make mistakes. You got to do those rounds where you look like a rookie and you piss off the other person on the other end and they walk from their own deal. But it's really where you're going to get it. As much as I want to say I've done everything perfect, Most of my mistakes came before this business. So that's how I was able to like really, okay, I'm going to start from scratch. I'm going to be a monster operator. I'm going to do it as clean as I could possibly can do. And that's my game. It was never, I'm going to make a unicorn company. I need to get money now. It was always like, what's good for the business at a micro level. And then as
Interesting.
opportunities presented itself, as we got more cash, we can now do acquisitions. We can now have those conversations and in a way better way, right? If I was an overfunded company right now, where my stock was technically worth nothing because it's sitting behind like Sequoia or Tiger Preference, I can't use my shares as currency to go acquire businesses. Instead, right now, the market turned and I'm in a perfect position because I'm sitting here with a healthy, clean business that prints money every month, gives me a war chest, and I can turn around to all the businesses that are not necessarily bad businesses, but still burning money and they can't raise money right now. Or if they do, it's going to be at a down round. So instead, it's okay, you have a great foundation. We're basically a PE firm to you. You come to us, we'll merge you in as an Alpine company. You can take shares in Alpine, which is great currency and growing in value. It actually does give you a chance at an exit. So that's the strategy in a down market like right now.
Yeah, so you become almost like an incubator for other companies in the industry.
Yeah, and rolling them into our ecosystem of privacy, security, our data funnels. It's all really important, especially in cannabis where that stuff doesn't exist as much.
Yeah. The way you're prioritizing everything, like even on your last business where you learned all the mistakes to apply to this one, even on the last one, you could say the one before that was where you also applied the mistakes to that business, right?
Yeah.
How many companies have you started altogether now?
It's funny because if you look back, was that a company or was that just because it wasn't as traditional, but maybe it did make money? So going back, I want to say like my entrepreneurial career started when I was just super young. Like I've always loved running businesses. Like my favorite video game was Roller Coaster Tycoon, and I would try to make the most money as a park ever. And it was just like, how do I make the best experience for the people on the rides, all the way up to like, then really my family was going through a hard time and I was living in other people's houses. And one of the things that I think
How old were you?
subconsciously, um, really the hardest parts were probably like 11 to
Wow.
18.
Okay.
I moved 45 times, 46 times
11,
since
18.
then.
Wow.
Yeah. And some of that was to work at studios and stuff. Some of it was to just because we had to. But like I would sit there and looking back at my childhood, I would say that it was overall awesome. We went through some hard times, but I didn't want to get kicked out of houses or put my family in that position. So like I played video games to take my mind off of this situation and to like also stay siloed so that I couldn't like interrupt in someone's household. So I played a lot of video games growing up, and my dad and my brothers, that's how we connected, right? Over playing games. And so I got really good at Halo when I was 13. And that was before like esports was big. There was a couple big ones, especially in Asia. There was a Major League Gaming was here in the US.
And you said you and your dad were connecting over Halo too?
More my brothers than my dad. He was more a business guy. So he was running companies and stuff, but we did like playing. And so, but the thing there was like this is really where I think it launched for me. So I wanted to do companies, but I was playing Halo and we were really good. I knew we could be good. Someone was like, why don't you build us a website? Can we get a website for our team where we have all of our best clips and like sponsorship decks and fan channels and stuff like that? And at that time it was like, I can't even remember. It was like Skype and like random forums.
You're like in high school, middle school.
Yeah. And so I learned how to code to make our first website. I learned how to do graphics and do video editing and pull our video off of like the tube screens and put it on a tape and then port it into the computer and figure out how to edit it into a montage. I did all that stuff. And then just on YouTube. Just on YouTube. And like, I wanted to do it, but like looking back, that's how I learned how to do sponsorship decks. And like investor decks are pretty much the same thing. It's convinced me that I should invest my money in this channel, in this business, which was a team at the time. And I'm going to get a return because it's NVIDIA or whoever it is that wants to sponsor gamers. But Twitch didn't exist, right? Everything was on forums. This was very new, like pitching a new industry with new sponsors, new concepts. Like it reminded me when I got into cannabis, like you're completely telling the story from scratch and there's not a lot out there to go off of. So I think that's really where it started. And then it was funny because I was playing Halo and we were at the national championships in Vegas. And like we drove up there with 5 kids in the back of my Tacoma with TV screens, and I got pulled over doing 93 and a 65 in the desert on the way to Hoover Dam. And it was like, it was just so funny because he's like, "Where are you guys going?" I'm like, "Oh, we're going to Vegas." I'm all shaky with my hand on the wheel.
Oh
I've
my
never
God.
gotten pulled over. I'm 16. I got like a driver's permit barely probably at this time. And
Dude,
he's
that's
yeah.
an opportunity for like context between you and I, like how we met through Exotic Drive Club. I was like 18. I started a drivers club for exotic car owners. I think you had just, I don't know how long you were living in Dallas, but how long were you living here?
I was probably like 5 or 6 years deep.
5 or 6
Yeah.
years deep. Yeah. So you had a GTR souped up and somehow you found out about my event. You came through at that event where we're doing the speed limit on the highway, obeying all the laws, having a great time. And that's literally what I did at 18. I was like, how do I just become around successful, motivating people that just show me a perspective on life? And you
Yeah.
were my absolute favorite till this day, honestly. And
Oh,
we bonded over the drive. And of course, we were just going the speed limit. Like it's super fun going 70 miles per hour as a group with nice cars. Whatever
were
that.
you going the speed limit? I don't remember going the speed limit. I
Listen,
remember that car even like my Paul Walker car.
I wasn't even driving. It's whatever
Yeah.
they were doing. It looked like they were
Actually,
doing 70.
that is a funny story because I remember so we were doing the tollway shutdowns and walkie talkies and all
Allegedly.
sorts of stuff allegedly,
Yeah.
and I think it's definitely past the number of years that we have to get in trouble for this. At this point, it's been like 8 or 9 years. But yeah, and then I remember asking you if you wanted to go grab like a beer, and you're like, "Dude, I'm not 21. I thought you were like
Yeah.
30."
I was
Like,
way younger. I know. I've been
no,
looking like I was 37 since I was 15. Like it's
yeah, that caught me really off guard. But yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was just so funny. Like we've always been into cars and racing and stuff like that.
yeah,
But
and that's how we bonded. And that they reminded me of the story because remember when we were at the gas station, like 30 exotic steeps, a very small gas station, cops pull up. And I'm like, shit, we've had a clean record for a couple months. I just started this venture. It's like the biggest group we've ever had.
yeah.
Cops pull up and they just start asking someone like, "Hey, what are you guys doing? Like, where are you guys going?" And I immediately run up to him. "We're going to church. It's Sunday. We're going to church. We just really have to get there, officer. There's really nothing else. We just want to go to church." He laughed it off. And I'm like, "Guys, everyone, when we hop back on the highway, please go below the speed limit this time." And that's when the alleged tollway shutdowns 3 lanes deep with 1,000 horsepower cars and exotics and Lambos and Ferraris are shooting off 3 at a time. And we do that for probably at least 10 miles, maybe 20, just going on the tollways until we go and eat some food together. Casual
Just
day
get
for
some
us.
food with Ludacris and Fast and Furious too.
Man.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No, what a
sorry to
what a
interrupt. I was like, that's a beautiful way to relate from a story we shared together on getting
from
pulled up.
my Halo Las Vegas pullover. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, he was just like, you do not want to spend a night in jail. Like I was a 110-pound kid, like going to Vegas with a gaming t-shirt on. He's like, you do not want to go to jail tonight, so I'm gonna write you for a 75 and a 65, and you're gonna go slow the rest of the way there. And yeah, it was funny. He was like, "Where are you going?" And I'm just like, "Oh, a video game tournament." And he just laughed at us. Like he thought going to Vegas, we were going to go party. And I'm like, "Oh, we're going to play video games, kid." I'm like, "That's what all the TVs in the back are for." And he thought we were like stealing TVs or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
And so I went to that championship and I had gotten into 3D to make graphics in front of, same thing with video editing and all that. I got into 3D to build rain, and I loved making particle effects and simulations of water and fire and smoke and explosions and all the cool stuff that's in video games. And that was my specialty, just like as a fun thing. And so I'm sitting there at the national championship. We just got like top 32 in Halo. And I'm at like the practice stations. And on the other side, there's a team playing us, right? And I'm like, man, these people are trash. How are they even at this place? They were so bad. And I recognized some of the names, the gamer tags on the screen. I'm like, where do I know that from? And I remember seeing one of the names in the documentary for the creating Halo documentary, like
Oh,
at
wow.
Bungie.
It's
And
shitting
so
on
I
them.
backed out of the lobby, realizing it was like the founders,
Oh,
right? The creators came back in, and my gamer tag was once internship, like abbreviated, like short. And they
shoot
thought it
your
was so
shot,
funny.
dude.
Oh,
That's
yeah, shot my
shoot
friggin'
your
shot.
shot to a gamer tag. God damn, that's brand new.
Yeah, and then he walked over. They walked over, said hi, and we talked to him. And I was trying to be nice that they were just so bad at their own game. It was hilarious. But they were there doing like research, and this guy was like, "Oh, you do like particle effects and stuff." And I showed him some of my YouTube stuff, and he was like, "Oh my god, this is pretty good." And he actually said, like on the spot, "You moved to Washington State. You have a job the second you come there." So I went home all stoked. And I cannot, for the life of me, I have no idea why, but I never called him. I never called him. Like I was too embarrassed of like my living situation or whatever it was, but I
Gotcha.
couldn't
The
get to
insecurities
Washington.
kind of creeped up, made you feel like you weren't worth that.
When I lived in Arizona, like I couldn't make it there, but like I was
Mm.
really trying at the time. I built websites for money. Like I was doing a lot of like kind of side gigs like that. Kept doing my thing. About a year goes by and I get called. I'm supposed to graduate from my homeschool high school in Ojai, California in person, meet my class for the first time ever in person on Sunday. And I live in Arizona. And I get a call on Friday afternoon. And they're like, "Hey, we saw your stuff on YouTube. We're a studio in California. Can you send us some rain? Just some rain simulations."
Yeah.
So I made some rain, like really close up. It would drop and like splatter, right? Which was hard to do. Water simulation was very new back then. It was very
Yeah.
difficult.
What year is that?
2007, 8
Yeah.
iPhone came out while I was working at the studio.
Yeah. Yeah.
So very difficult. It took forever to simulate. And I sent them back like a sample. And they're like, "All right, we can't tell you what you're working on here, but can you come here and be here Monday morning?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." And I'm
And
like looking at
how
my
old are
mom
you?
in Arizona, and I'm like living at somebody else's house. I don't really have resources. And I'm like, "You're driving me to my graduation, and then you're going to drop me off at this studio, and I'm going to live there. Like, I'm going to figure it out." So that's what we did. I graduated high school, and the next day I walk in. They had no idea like my age or anything.
Mm.
And I walk in and they're like, "Oh, okay, 18-year-old, you are
Yeah.
now the technical director of this concept art on the wall." And it was all the next Halo. And it was like secretly
Holy
being done
shit.
at the studio. And they're like, "Obviously, we want your skills in the culture of Halo and what people want here, but we love your particle effects." So they made me the technical director. And that's where I made a scene. One of my first scenes was a really cool scene with ODST, which is one of the characters. And he's sitting there in the rain, and he had just crash landed his pod. And so he pops out, and there's like rain everywhere. The entire game is rain. So that's why they wanted to have that. I did a lot of other things, but that ended up being, so about 3 months later, we're still in concept art stage. And this is the launch trailer. I just dropped this, so forgive that it's off.
Yeah.
But this whole screen, the screenshot right here, which ended up being the box cover, which you can see messed up because I just dropped this, unfortunately. But they called up and they asked, they said, "Hey, we loved it so much. Everybody got so stoked about seeing water for the first time like this. We're going to make this the box cover." So I'm like, basically go from broke, which I still was broke, to like, okay, I just made the video game cover for my favorite game of all time since I was a kid. It was such a crazy, like, full circle experience, and did a good job on that, and then moved my skill set into feature films, which was really fun. Did a couple movies like The Jellyfish for £7 with Will Smith. I did all the jellyfish with a team. We did G.I. Joe, like smoke, fire, water, green screen replacement, you name it. Like, we touched it. Some Disney movies, some horror films, did all that. And
just
mind you, like,
contracted for them, or
yeah, they're all for, usually you're on a project for anywhere from, it depends on what you're doing, but like 4 months to like a year and a half, right? And some studios work on several films at a time, so you touch different pieces. And that was fun, but I also was severely getting taken advantage of at the time. But at the same time, like looking back, like I would have worked there for free to get that on my resume before I turned 19. Like I could have gone anywhere after that. And that's, I think I made minimum wage. So I made like $11 to $12 an hour to do like particle physics simulations, like from scratch. Now you can just click a ball in Houdini and it just makes fire. Like I used to have to program what's viscosity and like wind and gravity. So
you did
I
the
mean,
infrastructure for the virtual world, basically.
Yeah. But then I just got sick of waking up next to this Homer Simpson in a bowling alley, like in the studio. And I'm like, dude, I'm not making anything. Like, I'm entrepreneurial. I want to do startups. I have this
And
on my
you did
resume.
all that like 18 through 19, like
Through
movies and
19, all in a
series.
year, all those
Wow.
films and games.
You're just getting contracted from studio to studio.
Yep. And then left and basically said, you know what, screw it. I'm going to go to Texas where my dad lives. We'd never really connected that much, like maybe just growing up here and there, but not, I never lived with him, never did that. So I moved to Texas. I stayed at his house for 6 months to a year and really got time with my brother West, who went to Tilray, right? And then started trying to build companies from there. And that's where we're working on like Cupid.com, the dating site, all the way through like I had a project management software I built from scratch. I really had a bunch of mentors that I met that were just teaching me things like how to make a pro forma, how finances work. Like, really wasn't that great at that time. That all super, super helped. But I was sleeping on like in the living room on a fold out Murphy bed that had like, I don't know, those dogs that my dad had pooped everywhere. It was just such a weird like vibe for what it is. But I just really wanted to be there and connect. And from that point on, I got 10 years with my dad before he passed away. So it was one of the best things I probably could have done is move to Texas, do that, met my wife there. We had our kids there, started building the company. And now I just moved to Denver. So that's where we are now.
You dedicated yourself for the reason of wanting to connect with your dad, right? That's why you moved to Texas mainly?
I wanted to do a startup. And I knew that he was really big in business. The most I ever got out of him was $500 to get rent for when I moved out of his house, and then I had to pay it back. But he was doing well. He owned a couple. He was the CEO for Thomson Reuters now, which does a ton of publishing. Right, one of the biggest publishing companies in the world. After that startup he had in the '90s with his brother, and then did some other things after that. So I really moved out there to be with him, but also seek his guidance and learn from him that's really where we connected, was over business. Like, it was his whole life. So
he was an accessible mentor for you.
Yeah. And it was really like, it was a good way for us to connect. And I'm really happy we got that time together. It was awesome.
Connecting over passion. Yeah. What better way?
I wish he could be here to see this, because he would just be stoked. But it is bizarre how the world works, right? I am a spiritual person. The way when I bought this house in Denver, which is my dream home where I always wanted to raise my kids, I worked so hard to get here. It was funny because when I went to go close on the house, the previous owner emails me and he says, "Hey, I reset all the codes on all your doors for you to move in." He doesn't know anything about my family. Like, they just sent it to the realtor, and it was my dad's birthday, the code to get into all the doors, which it was like a long digits of stuff, which is bizarre.
That's a big number to match. Yeah.
I thought it was pretty cool. There's been a lot of moments like that over the company lifespan. I just remember when me and West hit, I think it was like 20 grand a month. And I got a screenshot of us just ecstatic on Zoom. We were like freaking out. And now we're doing $2.5 million a month. Like, it's just unreal. I don't know how we got here. It's like, it really is like compounding. Like, people think there's a cheat code. You can make a Facebook ad and you'll just start selling. It's like, that stuff has a really short lifespan. That's great if you can do that. You can drop ship. You got a strategy there. MLMs, whatever, these like little light things that last a certain amount of time. And I've explored a lot of them. At the end of the day, I wish somebody just slapped me upside the face when I was 19 and just said, okay, fuck making a pretty deck. Like, fuck posting to Instagram and social media and all this stuff. Like, all that stuff does not matter. In a B2B SaaS environment, selling software, cold calling is all you need. You literally need nothing else. I don't care how many marketing graduates. Like, I'm a marketer. I sell marketing stuff, but it's consumer based. But yes, some of it does work. But if you're a startup, you have zero clout. No one's coming to your website the second you build it. No one gives a crap about your Instagram the second you build it. Like, you can invite your friends and then it stops. And then you use bots to inflate your numbers and you go after like sponsors and then blah, 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 blah. Like, it's all BS. At the end of the day, you need to call people that hold the keys to the kingdom. You sell them directly. You build a relationship. You show them value. So like, the way we started coding in 19, every 6 months or 3 months, we would go to an industry expert and we said, can you look at this product? Just tell them it's cool. There's no agenda. We're not trying to sell you. You're seeking advice, not money. And honestly, if you seek advice, not money, that's like telltale. That's usually when you get money. When you seek
Mhm.
money, you get advice, and then the opposite. So,
It's human. Yeah, it makes sense. It's human.
yeah, and you're just showing them, I want to build a valuable product that helps you solve a problem. That's all it is. And then you cold call, and you have to pick up the phone. I was so scared of picking up the phone. You got to make 100 calls a day. That's 5 hot demos. Then you sell 2 of those. That's 2 a day, right? That would be ideal. Obviously, it doesn't go like that. It takes a while, depending on the product. There's a pipeline. You really need to make that process and just repeatable process. Otherwise, you're going to be super, super sketched out when your marketing funnel bleeds out.
Yeah, I've seen you basically build war rooms for every company you've had just for straight up sales calls, cold calling.
Yeah.
You prioritize that through every venture you've had.
And most engineers, they just don't have that personality, right? Like I'm very product and engineering kind of founder, but the secret sauce is really knowing the sales and like process SOP, boring automations, like dealing with people, helping others, right? Like how do you set up proper healthcare?
Yeah, that's another context. I forget Nick is literally one of my clients with healthcare insurance. So I do small group health insurance. And you've been a client for many years now, and you're getting to 60 employees. You're about to double to 120, and we do all the health insurance for his company. So they kept that within the family. And yeah, it looks like everyone's happy over there. I'm sure that helps with retention too.
Yeah, and that's another thing, right? Like you gotta, I'm the type of person where if you're in my circle, I want you to do well. I want you to be, I want you to be your family's hero and stuff like that. I try to work with people as much
You
as I
gave me
can.
my first iPhone. I just needed a phone. My phone had broke. Yeah. It was like 2016. My phone broke, and you're just like, hey, dude, I got one. You just gave me your iPhone.
I forgot about that. All right.
Yeah. That's how generous. Business, everything, like you just trust and you just keep it in the family and you keep going.
Yeah. It's how you build good relationships. You got to help people and they'll help you. And that's another thing is there's a lot of people just chasing lots of money and that's their goal. But I've never made money unless I've made somebody else a lot more money. Like you're not trying to make 100%. You're trying to make small incremental growth compound and you're helping lots of people get to where they want to be. There's always a bigger fish, right? Whether it's your board member, an investor, some LP, like they all have to make their returns.
Yeah, that's what makes you a great leader, CEO. You didn't even have to do health insurance for your employees, especially as a startup with everything that you're already bleeding on during the beginning days, but you prioritize it for them.
Yeah, no, there's definitely, you got to do that, especially in the US. Like we do have Canadian employees, which is just bonkers compared to like here. There's so many hoops here on just like people operations. If you just look at like the core business of what actually makes money, there's at this scale, there's a lot of distractions, a lot of things that just have to be done for state regulation or for whatever reason, but they don't actually contribute to the success of the bottom line. They do from a happiness and staff perspective, but if you're talking about just bare bones startup and you're looking out there to start something from scratch, these are more like distractionary things. That's why eventually you need to have enough capital to bring in leadership in HR and customer success, escalation, stuff like that for those processes so that you don't have to deal with those and you can focus on the vision and kind of the overall picture.
That really is what separates you. Like the engineer is 10 out of 10, and then somehow the business development is also 10 out of 10. But what made you good at hiring, firing, and finding the right people to work with? That's even an extremely tough skill.
We actually, I like to joke, it's not that ridiculous and misogynistic, but I do like to joke that it was like that scene in Wolf of Wall Street where they were sitting around the table at like some diner and Jordan Belfort, played by Leo, was like, this is my friend Joey. He was really good at selling bikes and also weed. And this is Diaz, and he could sell mattresses and also weed. Like it was like that. We were just like, all right,
it relates to your business. You guys are fucking helping sell weed.
Well, and the problem is like at that time it was like, okay, we don't have the budgets to hire really experienced people from like a Klaviyo or MailChimp or whatever it was, segment.com, Snowflake. And it was 2020, 2021 where like salaries were super inflated and people there was no talent. There was no talent unless it was you had a huge budget. One of the things we did was just like we went to all of our friends, some family, and we're like, basically, you don't mind cannabis and you're okay with it. And we convinced them that it was a great sector to grow in. And most of the people we got are consumers, but some of them are not. And I also lived in Texas at the time, which is not a legal state, right? Barely even med. But we were able to convince those people to come on board, and they really put in the work and helped us out. And we got here because of them. So it was super interesting. At this stage, with a company this scale, there's a lot of different problems. So we still have a lot of that staff. Terminations wise, I think we've had one voluntary leave. They just wanted to go into real estate, which is an amazing metric for a company that's 4 years old, only having one voluntary leave.
I didn't even know that. It's awesome.
Yeah, so we're family first. Everybody thinks like an owner. We do the right thing all the time. Like, these are our core values. Whether it's like somebody's healthcare thing didn't kick in time, we got to pay cash for their stuff for a week or two. I just always want to help people, and if we can have the cash to do it and it's not ridiculous, like, we go do it. So hopefully more of that in our future now that we are where we are.
Dude,
Yeah.
no, that's crazy. You didn't even, what made you provide health insurance when you didn't even have to?
I think we had to. Like, to get talent as well. Like, they need healthcare. I think it's ridiculous in the US that you even have to do it, but like, really wanted them to have good healthcare.
That's the right thought. Like, you have to, like, well, like, you have talent come through at that level and be like, sorry, we're not like over 50 employees, so we don't really have to offer it, but we can subsidize a little bit, maybe. No, everyone gets it. It's not, no questions asked.
Yeah, it is ridiculous to me when people are like, oh, we don't pay healthcare. I'm like, dude, it's not that expensive. You can't do that. It's not like probably a solid business at that point. But
yeah.
I
was just going to say, you have a lot of things that could have made you just be a complete victim. Childhood, just growing up pretty poor, in pretty rough conditions. You could have daddy issues. You could have mommy issues. You could have had all of that. But even 11 through 18, that's basically your childhood. You still pushed on, and you just had your own kind of angel on you that just said, let's go fuck around and find out.
Yeah, I would say that I did have, looking back as a, I don't know if you call me an adult, but you know what I mean, a more responsible person, I would say that I did definitely chase my dad's opinion and approval. And that was a huge part of my motivation, right? And maybe I did have some of that, but I feel like you'll never talk to somebody that is doing really well that didn't go through quite a bit of trauma. 100%. And that's unfortunate, but you got to find that balance where it's like, I think there was actually like a study where it's like just enough trauma to where like you're motivated, but not too much trauma to where you seek a vice to cover it up. That would be like drug abuse or alcohol or something like that. And that's really the sweet spot, apparently, based on this study. So I don't know. I definitely wouldn't wish it on anybody, but most of the people that I've met that are successful and did not come from trust funds or whatever it is and are self-made all came from pretty severe trauma that caused them to be motivated for the next step. But we didn't come this far just to get this far. Keep going.
Yeah, that part where you said you were like, there was one person you were looking for approval from. There was one person's opinions you did value. Like people say, the less you care about what people think, the more you'll do in life. That's pretty accurate. But you being self-aware of that, like what made you self-aware that you had that one person that you were looking for approval from, being your dad? What made you realize it, and how'd you work around that?
I feel like once I had kids, I realized it way more just through thinking and doing my own like personal therapy. I didn't really see a therapist. I did when I was growing up, but not like in my adult life. I also contribute like a lot of my therapy. I also did a lot of microdosing and mushrooms after my dad passed away to get me through. I'd never had a panic attack in my life until then. The world really came down around me with all the stress that was happening. I was having kids. I had a young one. I had my wife in school full time. He passed away. This was all within a year and a half. And I also just moved into a new house, like a couple blocks from where my dad lived, to be closer with him. So then I was in that environment where I was always thinking about it, just getting through it. Started doing microdosing for about 3 months, which really helped me just view the world a little bit different. Made me a lot more happy. And then right after that, I got into the cannabis industry and said, you know what, this is the next road I'm going to walk down. Yeah, it's some of that. It is never like a good solution to that, but just to keep processing and being real with yourself instead of taking it out on drugs or alcohol or something like that where you can't.
Yeah. I definitely don't consider psychedelics as much of a drug, but what made you take that step to help? Was that your intention, for it to help with recovery and therapy? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I had a friend in Dallas that said that it was probably a good idea, and I researched it a ton and just grinded it up into coffee and put it in there once every 3 days, and just enough to feel a buzz, like a coffee buzz. It wasn't like I wasn't seeing unicorns or anything. I've definitely taken enough to have that experience, but microdosing really helped. I would highly recommend it. In fact, it's funny, now that I live in Denver, I feel like there's more mushrooms around than alcohol. Like almost everybody at bars and stuff, it's insane how, because it's decremed here, it's insane how much it's just everywhere here. It's everywhere. But I don't think that's probably going to be a huge business, only because think about it, right? Cannabis, you buy an ounce. In some states, you could buy it for $60 to $100 to $200,
just the
right?
volume and potency. Gotcha.
Yeah, the consumption of it. Most people are getting like a tiny mushroom that's going to cost like nothing, and then like they do that once a year.
You don't need it to be more potent, so you don't need to pay for a more expensive strand.
Yeah, so I think there's a business there, but it's not going to be anywhere near the size of cannabis. No chance. But it is interesting to watch blossom, and more states are decriminalizing, and they got Canada where things like MDMA are also heavily used in therapeutics, or ketamine.
Yeah.
But those should also be used probably behind closed doors, just because there is still a fentanyl epidemic, right? Like it is very frustrating that the government doesn't do something about this. Like it's frustrating, but it's understandable because they don't want to lose their voter base. And the reality is if you do what Oregon did and make a haven, people are going to flock there. If drugs are illegal, are legal everywhere, then there is no haven place, and you can get quality tested stuff. Everybody is dying because fentanyl is in random street drugs. If you could just go to a dispensary and say, oh, I want a little bit of MDMA, I want a little bit of this, and you're done deal, some mushrooms, like, oh my God, deaths would drop drastically. It's insane what that would actually do for us, but they just will never address it.
Yeah, I would have thought there would have been more progress on legalization for everything after the openness on weed, but yeah, it's not moving at all. So you being in the industry, you don't really see it moving at all that way either, do you?
I think it's going to be off the federal docket for a long time. I think they're too distracted with Ukraine and fiscal problems, and there's a million things going on here. I think the more likely path is that it's going to be a long time till federal legalization. And in the interim, we'll get the Safe Banking Act, which would allow for capital to flow into the industry and out. And right now, everything's very trapped. So it's very difficult for operators. And also taxes need to drop substantially when you can, tax a cigarette box for almost nothing. I know it's higher than it used to be, which is still bonkers, but cannabis is 20% plus. I'm like, there's so many taxes. It's so hard to even operate. It's ridiculous. Just razor thin margins. People are exiting states like California, right, entirely. Like Wana Edibles left California entirely, biggest edibles company in the world. There's tons of people that are throwing out their licenses. Oklahoma has more dispensaries in it than Walmart, Starbucks, and McDonald's combined.
Wow.
And you can only sell medical card holders, which we know publicly what the number of med card holders are. It's impossible to sell the amount of weed that they have. It's literally impossible. It's all import, export, and illegal operations under the table.
Okay. So that's pretty valid. Just from just the public data, that's pretty valid.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. It's impossible not to be going down, and
so it's still inspiring it's still inspiring drug trades more than ever, if anything.
Yeah, like why isn't Texas legalizing? All the cannabis in Texas is coming from other states, right? Like they should be getting that tax revenue and doing something with it, like maybe fixing their fucking power grid. Like I mean, like literally anything. It's super frustrating. We'll get through it. It's early days for cannabis.
I like how you view the politics and how it's not a priority on their list, but these are the things that they'll probably tackle first, like money being the one, Safe Banking Act. And then from there, hopefully taxes, right? So it's just a practical standpoint of view. I like that because not a lot of people have that viewpoint. And I'm a big proponent of like therapy, but you self-therapied, right? Pretty much throughout your whole life, like the choice to do mushrooms, microdosing, and even throughout childhood. It looks like you never had a drug addiction or alcoholism, never anything like too extreme. So would you consider that to be more of like a DNA thing where it wasn't in you, you just had better things, or it was because you stayed busy that you ended up not falling down that path?
So I would say that there was probably like 3 months of my life when I was like maybe 22 where I went down a bad path with drugs, but it was 3 months. And then I got to the end of the 3 months. I met my wife at that time,
Mm,
and I threw it all in the trash that day, and that's it. It
that's
was
awesome.
literally cold turkey, but it was like a crazy daily type of thing at that point. And it took me about 3 months to get there, but never really had an addictive personality. When I raced motocross as a kid, I had a really bad accident and I was prescribed Percocet, which
Mm,
took about, I remember handing my mom the bottle and just being like, dude, I don't know why I'm taking these. I'm not in pain anymore.
wow.
Like, I think it's crazy that you can give that stuff to people. I would have much rather them hand me like some Wana edibles at the time or something
100%. The
instead. It's just
pharmaceuticals are
unbelievable.
so much more damaging.
Yeah. But I wouldn't say like I've ever had a super addictive personality, never smoked cigarettes, never really got into that. Like I drank in high school like everybody does to get through their social anxiety and learn. But I never really had a huge issue with that.
Yeah. And I was just tying that in like to your rational thinking on the politics and not like having that victim mentality just because it seems like that it's a little bit of a DNA thing just because like common sense isn't common. You can find that out the hard way. But even in how you've approached business and how you've taken full responsibility for everything you've done in your life, that I've seen just being a quality of everyone we know that's successful that we actually also enjoy being around at the same
Yeah.
time. It just seems like a DNA thing, just holding yourself accountable, being responsible for you and others around you, and just being a decent person all around. So I commend you on that. And this was a perfect transition. You probably have to go soon, but just let me know. You meeting your wife and then throwing away the drugs and getting back on your path. I always think like relationships and just having the right person or finding the right person is also a good avenue in your life, right? So if you want to talk about that,
Yeah.
after how soon when did you meet her? How'd you meet her? And then what made you put the drugs away for her?
Yeah. My girlfriend right before that was like her parents worked 9 to 5 at car companies like Ford, GM type of thing. So
Hmm.
my entrepreneurial career was like
Uh,
not something that she was used to. And it was a big problem for me. Like,
it
you know,
wasn't compatible. Like you might have had
yeah,
chemistry, but the compatibility wasn't there.
yeah. It was the conversation like, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to work 20 hours a day. like I'll do this, but this is more important. And at the time, I think that person wanted something else. And I met my wife, who was the complete opposite. She wanted me to hit the gas and go faster. And the GTR, she didn't. She was just totally about freedom. I think for me, like having freedom to operate is the necessity. Like I can't be tied to a certain
Yeah.
schedule or something at that time. And
She
she
pulled out
really
the
just
excitement out of you too, like speeding, the fast cars, and she was one of the like the partners of the car club that I was like, no, please, you both need to come together. Like, never come alone. Just
yeah, she always did. Dude, my wife was rad. We just had the time of the life. I think 2 months into dating, her mom and her were like, hey, do you want to go to Lake Tahoe to snowboard? I'm a travel agent. And then 3 months after that, they're like, you want to go to Bermuda? And I'm like, dude, this is awesome. Where do I buy a ring at? And they were just fantastic people. So, you
that is
know,
really how quick it works with men. Like you find that type of compatibility, the family accepts you. Yeah, we're thinking about the ring.
yeah. Yeah. And the first time I picked her up from her house, I hopped out, shook her mom's hand, had my license plate number. I'm like, I'll have her back by this time. I know, like, I have a sister, like, people are scumbags. So I'm
Yeah,
like, but yeah, no, we actually, our 10-year anniversary is this October. So only a month away. And yeah, just really helped me throughout the career. She's our EA for our executives and schedules and deals with checks and
yeah.
knows
She set
every
up this
single
meeting.
player in the cannabis space. And it's actually a really funny story about her. She's gonna like really be pissed when I tell this,
Please.
but like we were in at this conference called MJ BizCon, which is the biggest cannabis conference in Vegas every year. And we were there this last year. We held a big breakfast party in this huge like villa at the Wynn Resort overlooking the golf course. We had 300 people in this villa with like full on breakfast. You could have gotten rid of that hotel room and like cannabis would have died because there was so many executives from all the
It's
biggest
crazy.
brands. It was really cool. It was really humbling, really cool. But she had to walk all these people through the casino all the way to this villa, which was pretty far back. And she'd have to open a bunch of doors to get them all in. So she was introducing herself. And I was sitting there talking to somebody randomly, and nobody really knew she was my wife, right? Like we try to have a good business separation just to avoid the nepotism BS that people try to throw out there. And
100%.
she walks in. I can't do a British accent, but she introduced me to somebody I knew in a full British accent. I was like pulling her aside. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And she's, oh, I've been British all day. Nobody's noticed. And so she's hilarious, man. She finds
In the
every way to
most
make
serious
something fun.
environment, she decides to throw in a whole new identity and somehow make that work for the company and you guys.
Oh yeah,
Know the
absolutely
story out of it.
hilarious.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you gotta have a good time while you're doing it. But
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, right? Everyone has a goal that they want to get to and someone's opinions that they care about, and that holds them back from happiness until they reach their goal. But you're a living example that you really need to enjoy every moment. And it seems like it's not even about the companies you've started and the crazy 7, 8 figure net worth IPOs and the valuation. It's not about any of that. It's like you wanted to make this venture clean, as you said, from everything you've learned, you wanted to do it clean and do it right and find some happiness along the way while you're building.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty much the only goal, man. I don't know what other goal we're chasing. My dog.
Now, if you died right after this podcast, just because that's like a thing we're known for in this podcast, right? If you happen to die after this one, what would you feel like you still had left to accomplish?
A lot. I'm not even close to done, man. This is just getting started. At this point, I want to do a lot of M&A. I want to do a lot with my family. I just got to Colorado. I can't wait to raise them snowboarding, and we didn't even talk about that, but I have a huge passion for action sports. And so bringing them up here was huge. So really just mostly family goals and business goals at this stage. Still like sports and stuff, but I can't get hurt as much as I used to. Maybe I'll get another car. I'll come back to the car club, man.
Dude, 100%. How about you like branch off into the Denver Exotic Car Club? That'd be great.
There's actually a huge car scene up here. Huge.
You better get that Lambo.
Yeah. You lose like 15 to 20% of your power up here because of the altitude, and the speed limits are all 55 for the winter. There's one highway that's a 70. So you're getting fat tickets rolling through Colorado.
Yeah. And you're pushing your car as extreme as you have to just because it's that elevation. Yeah.
And what have you been doing lately, man? It seems like you've had a lot of cool revelations and posts and shit. Like, what's been going on?
I love that, like the million things you have going on, and you've always cared about me and paid attention to that. Yeah, when you met me, like I was just young, 18, trying to do something I like, just because that's the whole theme of this, right? Like even this interview style, I'm finding out like you're prioritizing what's important to you, right? You're doing the things you actually care about, the things you want to be known for, your legacy, your family goals, your business goals. And your business goals aren't even like just career goals. They're personal to you because you like being an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
So I realized like, I cared about what everyone thought of me for the longest time. I still do. But that's what drove me from 18 to 26 is just caring about what people think. So that car club was amazing. I'm surrounded by millionaires, and I grew up in Bangladesh, and we were well off because my dad was a businessman. But if you compare that to America, we were in the ghetto, basically. We got to boil our water. You got to be worried about getting stabbed when you walk out during the day, getting robbed. That's why I moved here, because my dad kept getting robbed, and they paid off the city's Capitol Police to not show up. And then they said, your son's next. And we moved to America within a week. He lost everything. We started over. And now we're here.
Here we are.
Yeah. So just
you turned into ludicrous, man. Straight up. Like when I met you, I was like, this guy's ludicrous from Too Fast and Furious, just setting up all his cool shit.
Dude, yeah. Bangladesh, that was like one of my core memories, was seeing a Ferrari Enzo in the Bollywood film. And just my car passion took off from there. My dad had a Toyota MR2 with the billionaire door type stuff.
That's what do you mean the doors that go up?
Yeah.
So
I had that passion for cars for longest. And I think at 14, I started networking at car shows, surrounded by more millionaires. I got into a potentially like illegal drug trade part of my life. When things just started going south, I started smoking and I started allegedly dealing. All that kind of just threw me in a loop. I started drinking at 16, and that's really where things like, okay, I care about what everyone thinks. Alcohol started becoming a bigger part of my life. I still wanted to be around the right people. So as soon as I graduated high school, like a year early, not because I was smart, just because I didn't want to be there. Got out of high school. 100%. Like I just don't want to be here. And then I was like, I got to stop selling. I got to stop being around these people. Let me just be around cooler people. How do I do that? I have no idea. I like cars. Let me see if I can do something for other people with cars. And that's how I met you and have my entire friend group 10 years later now. But the alcohol thing became a big problem because even though I'm around successful people and good people around me, I'm still defaulting into caring about what everyone thinks. So I'm drinking a shit ton to just minimize the effects of not being successful, not going any direction I want. For some reason, I can't work a job and run a business. I can't do any of it. So I'm just like shooting myself down for those 8 years since you've known me.
And people finally, that are really rich have alcohol problems too.
Dude, yeah, and it's like
it's hard to get away from it. Yeah, you got to watch out, especially if they don't have the right motivations that you were talking about, right? They're maybe handed their wealth, right? That's a big problem.
I have a lot of empathy for that because like cocaine gets introduced. Like the more money you have, the harder the drugs get. And they're all doing it.
That's a TikTok clip right there.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I'm so glad we got it.
I feel like the cut from that is to like super yachts and it's some, yeah.
But that's like real empathy. I'm running more problems type shit. Yeah. One of the reasons, like I even developed a coke addiction, I'll be honest about that, was because my friends had it and it was like the best shit and it was always available. So combine that with alcohol and being a victim to yourself, giving a shit about what other people think. So you never just do what you actually want to do. All of that that's basically, even though the entire time you've been supportive of me and you've loved me, you've been a great person, I had to fix myself. So I never confronted that shit.
Yeah, you got to succeed in silence a little bit, right? Like you really, like people don't, like it's not about like, when I say build relationships to build your business, yeah, that is applicable to sales, but like most of what makes you successful is way behind the scenes. You need a dark room with a laptop. You don't really need, you don't need all this stuff. You don't like, I got pulled into the 3 months I'm talking about with you as well. That's where I got pulled into, oh, you need to meet people at nightclubs and bottle service. And like, this is the cool thing to do. They make money, right? They buy these bottles when in reality, it's none of those people have real stable anything. Like it's just gnarly.
The facade is so real, dude.
Yeah.
That's what was going on.
Especially in Dallas, a lot of trust fund babies in Dallas, a lot of oil money running around.
Yeah, literally what we're known for. Stay pretentious is like one of the bar's slogans. That's the standard. Really? Yeah, stay pretentious. Yeah.
Oh no. Yeah,
and that's like the quality of women we have around here sometimes too, and business. Just anyone you meet, you don't know if they're real, if they're authentic. That was one of the things I like about you and my entire friend circle right now is like, who's authentic? That matters way more.
But, the real G's, bro. The real G's.
And let me know whenever you have to go. But to close my chapter, so we had a similar story with like my dad ended up in the hospital last year. And I was like 1 month sober exactly almost when that happened. And if I wasn't sober, I was about to hit the play button on my decks for DJing and someone had offered me a bottle of tequila. I said no. I would have been shit-faced by the time I hit play. And instead, I took my mom's call. I missed a call. Dad's in the hospital, had a bad stroke. He's still recovering till this day. Yeah. But that was like what set me up. Okay, I definitely need to stop drinking. After I stopped drinking, I relapsed 4 months in. But even along that path, okay, cool. I'm doing something I love. I'm DJing. I'm actually making some decent money somehow. Like I just started. And not drinking made me pursue other things. I started prioritizing my health. So it's like the amount of distractions and victimizing that you do while drinking, it all starts to slowly go away and you just have to confront yourself. So health became a priority. And then I started therapy at the beginning of this year. I lost 20 pounds already. And now doing the thing that I've been most terrified to do is do a podcast or start making content. I've always wanted to do that my entire life. Never told a single soul. I've never had big goals for anything I've done in my life except for this. So like this one, yes, I want to go big.
Let's fucking go.
Dude, I love you.
Nice, dude. Appreciate you having me on the pod. Actually, you didn't even tell me because it's so brand new. What's the name of the pod? Do we even have a name?
Yeah, so I'm tired of rebranding myself because of the amount of shit I do with my life, and I just keep switching. Yeah. So I'm like, fuck it, I'm just gonna go with my name. So this is the Justin J. Ramon experience. So
there you go.
Yeah,
I love it, dude. This is the experience. Welcome to the Justin J. podcast.
God damn it, I love you, Nick.